Welcome, everyone. My name is Mara Fleischman, and I am the CEO of the Chef Ann Foundation. And I'm really excited to be here today. We have a really cool webinar planned for you today. So we have a really important conversation about local procurement in school meals. There is a lot of conflicting information about whether school food programs can truly procure higher quality ingredients. And in this webinar, we're going to explore the realities of districts' ability to incorporate more local, regenerative, and organic food into their programs. And just a little bit about the Chef Ann Foundation. We are a national nonprofit that works across the country to help schools move to serve less processed food and more freshly prepared scratch-made meals. And this is the third webinar in our three-part series over the 2025, and we're really excited. I have a little bit of housekeeping for us before we dive in. Um, so again, this is the last of the three-part series of our webinar series, but in 2026 we will launch the new series, so keep your eyes open for that. This will be recorded, so you can access it at any time. We will be sending it out. We encourage you to engage with us through the webinar. Use the chat to connect with each other and feel free to share where you're joining from and what brings you here today. For questions, though, if you can submit your questions in the Q&A feature, which is kind of down below in the bar, that will help us track where your questions are because the chat fills up and it's hard to track all the questions. So that would be great. But also in the chat, if someone's speaking and you have a link to something that's pertinent to what they're saying, also please feel free to put that in the chat. Any questions that can be quickly answered or clarified by the Chef Ann Foundation team in real time will be. And we have reserved time at the end to allow for some audience questions. If there's any questions that we don't get to on today's discussion, we'll do our best to address them in a post-webinar email. We're also going to capture all of the highlighted links and information in the chat, which we will also send out in a post-webinar email. It's pretty cool. We get a lot of participation on these calls, and this is like an amazing community that joins us and has a lot of rich information. So it's great that we're able to collect it all. Okay. Well, let us get started. So we are joined today by an incredible panel of experts who really bring unique insights from research, policy, and school food operations. And on our panel today, we have Suzy Friedman, who's the Senior Director of Great Plains Policy at the World Wildlife Fund. We have Haile Johnston, who's the co-founder and co-CEO of Common Market. You guys can wave when you, oh, good. Okay, you're waving. Great. We also have Kathleen Merrigan, who's a PhD executive director of the Swette Center for Sustainable Food Systems at Arizona State University, and previously our U.S. Deputy Secretary of Ag. And also Vanessa Zajfen, who is Chef Ann Foundation's Senior Director of Procurement. Great. So it's a really amazing crew we have here today to add to this conversation. So let's dive in and start unpacking what change really can look like. We'll start with Suzy. Suzy, could you briefly add any introduction about your background and your organization, and then tell us about the specific moment or experience in your work that fundamentally changed how you think about what's actually possible when it comes to school food procurement?
Sure. Thank you so much for including me in this great discussion today. So, Suzy Friedman, as you said, I'm at World Wildlife Fund, direct policy on our Great Plains program. I've been working in sustainable agriculture for more than 2 decades now, and it's been just a great experience. And World Wildlife Fund works on nature, climate, and people globally, really large organization working in the conservation space. And gosh, a really clear moment for me was a couple of years ago when I was able to take a trip to the Mundo Verde School in DC and walking into this school, and there was just this overwhelming, amazing smell. It smelled like a bakery. And it was just amazing because it was so unlike my experience. And we learned so much that day about the work that this school was doing in sourcing their food sustainably and scratch cooking all of their food and doing composting and a food loss and waste program. And it was so different from the experience that I remembered as a kid, the food in our schools and what I experienced with my kids in their schools. And I just so clearly remember my son would eat anything and he would not touch this food in the breakfast and lunch programs at school. And so it was just so eye-opening and mind-opening and smelled so amazing to be in a school where there was such thought going into how they were sourcing and how they were preparing this amazing food for the kids and the benefits it was bringing to what they were eating and the outcomes for their behavior and their education and their enjoyment of the food and the health benefits. And it really jump started. It was so exciting to see in the school, but then it really jump started my thinking about the nexus in this school and the connection between the sustainable agriculture work that I'd always done, thinking about, all right, what do we need to change in terms of the support for how do we support sustainable production for farmers on the landscape? But that connection in terms of how do we support that in terms of sourcing in schools and what our kids are eating. And it was such an aha moment, that connection between sustainable agriculture and production and nutrition policy and sourcing in schools, and the really important connection between those two. And so it was just a really strong, powerful moment for me. And then just thinking about, this was one school in DC, and this is such a powerful issue across the whole country, from this school in DC to schools all across the country and tribal schools, and just that powerful opportunity to connect those two. And so just been something that has been very front and center and in my mind since then.
Thanks so much, Suzy. I think so many of us who get into this work have both our professional experience and our personal experience with kids, with our own kids. And I think it's so interesting to see where they both come together. I really appreciate you being here. Haile, could you briefly introduce yourself and your organization, add to that kind of background of your organization and yourself, and tell us about one specific moment or experience in your work that fundamentally changed how you think about what's actually possible when it comes to school food procurement?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Haile Johnston. Again, I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of the Common Market, and we're a nonprofit regional food distributor connecting good food from sustainable family farms, primarily working within the institutional food service space, and in particular institutions that are meeting the needs of vulnerable communities. So we bridge the void, the relationships between small, mid-scale family farms and institutional markets. And we've been doing this for about almost 18 years, founded in Philadelphia and working across 4 geographies. Our second location was in Atlanta, Georgia. We have a chapter in Houston, Texas, and now in the Great Lakes, centered in Chicago. But that moment for me was with a school district in South Jersey, the Bridgeton School District, one that we had been working for years to build relationship with and deepen their farm to school program. In particular, they wanted to launch a salad bar program. And so we were working with them around sourcing specific ingredients for the salad bar, and had a whole bunch of local things. And so it was a day I was going to visit, and again, zeroed in on the salad bar. And when I walked into the cafeteria, what did I smell? I smelled pizza. And so I was going to see the salad bar on a day when it would be competing with the pizza bar, right, or the pizza line. And everybody knows it's often kids' favorite day. But the thing that was really incredible was as the kids began to file into the lunchroom and the teachers were preparing them and getting them in line, these kids began to elbow each other out of the way to be first in line at the salad bar. And they were preferencing the salad bar over the pizza line. And they actually had to be encouraged to go and get their pizza as well. So when I saw that, I knew that not only was it possible to get good food into the schools, but the kids actually want this as well.
Woohoo, I love that. A story that shows the preference of salad bars, which we see a lot, is so awesome. Thank you for that. Really appreciate it. And thank you guys for engaging in the chat. I love seeing where everyone's coming from and why they're coming here. So it's really cool. All right, next we have Kathleen Merrigan. And Kathleen, could you briefly kind of expand on the introduction of yourself and your organization and tell us about a specific moment or experience in your work that fundamentally changed how you think about what's actually possible when it comes to school food procurement? And apologies for my mispronunciation of your center. I said sweet, but it is sweetie. I am so sorry.
That's fine. Everyone does that. I should always say it's sweetie as in sweetie pie. So I run a research center at Arizona State University in a lot of degree programs, including master's degrees with big scholarships if anyone's interested. My career has been half politician, half academic. So I worked in the Senate. I was the AMS administrator at USDA, procuring food for school meals, and I was deputy secretary, as had already been mentioned. A moment of time. I go back to the days when I was a professor at Tufts in downtown Boston, and there was an elementary school right by my school, and I wanted to uh, build out a garden curriculum program and really introduce what was a very low income, highly diverse student population to the wonders of food production. And it took me a year and a half to get in the building because the teachers were so overwhelmed with everything that they had to do that I was just seen as another burden. When I convinced them that I would bring the people power with me and make their jobs actually easier, I got in the door. A year into it, I raised the funds. I was so excited. I raised the funds to hire buses to bring these inner city students out to a farm that was run by the Audubon Society, because I thought it's going to be, for most of these kids, it's going to be the first time they ever get on a farm. And I was patting myself on the back, and it was that day when I was on the bus and I realized that for most of these students, they had never seen a highway. They had never been out of the city. And so what I thought I was doing, opening the door to the farm, it was much greater. And it was that moment in time that really captured my attention around issues of equity and the challenges before me and my work and all of you. And it's just this week, right? We hear about Elon Musk's pay package, $1 trillion, and that's $3 billion more than the combined salaries of all elementary school teachers in the United States of America. So I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer here, but I just want to say that the justice and equity aspects of our work always need to remain front and center. That's what I learned.
So true. And I also want to say that in my work, I get to meet a lot of people. And often when I meet really smart food systems people, I learn that they've gone through Kathleen's master's program at in Arizona. It's like it's 9 times out of 10, I find out that they've gone through that program. It is such a cool program. So thanks, Kathleen. All right, let us move on to Vanessa. Vanessa, could you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit. You have a lot of history in your background. Tell us a little bit more about your background and tell us kind of what moment fundamentally changed what you think can happen in school food procurement.
Yeah, pleasure. Hi, and welcome everybody. I'm CAF's Senior Director of Procurement. So in this role, I support our SFAs enrolled in CAF programming with identifying and sourcing and menuing values-aligned foods in their scratch cook programs. But prior to joining CAF, I was a food service director for 8+ years at two different districts in California. And I started my career in school food as the first farm to school coordinator in San Diego Unified School District back in 2010. I'm also pretty proud to say that even though this is going to date me, and I realize what I just said dated me, I was part of the first farm to school grant team at the USDA in 2013, managing the farm to school grantees in the Midwest region. My moment happened actually while I was at San Diego Unified School District. And for those of you that don't know, San Diego Unified School District is the second largest district in California. It serves, at least at the time that I was there, about 84,000 meals a day across 300 school sites. And I was hired and brought in to start their farm to school program. When I came on board, there was zero intentional local sourcing. And let's just say some kitchen staff were very resistant to the idea of farm to school. One kitchen manager in particular really was not a fan. She would sabotage orders. She refused to put farm to school items on her salad bar. And I did my best to bring her along. I'd bring her local treats whenever I visited her kitchen. I would come to her kitchen to prep farm to school orders for the salad bar all the time. And then one day, maybe 8 months into my time there, she calls my desk and she's super upset. And I'm thinking, oh no, what have local foods done today? Right? And she says, Vanessa, my produce order just arrived and they sent me navel oranges. And I said, okay. And she replies, isn't it Valencia orange season? What should I do? Refuse to accept the order? And I just thought in that moment, wow, look how far this woman and the second largest school district have come in just 8 months. She's now making subtle distinctions between seasonal orange varieties. And so from that point on, I really thought, you know what, K-12 can do this. We can do this local thing. So
That's great. I'm sure you have a lot of other stories. We are so lucky to have Vanessa on the team and her years and years of experience. She gets to go out and work with districts and help them on their procurement strategies. All right, we are going to dig in now to some questions. And my first question I have is for Haile. So, Haile, the Common Market works directly with farmers and food hubs to get local food into institutions. Can you walk us through like a real example of how you've helped a school district overcome like logistical challenges of sourcing local food, particularly around like aggregation, distribution, price points? And are you seeing or finding different challenges in certain parts of the country?
Yes, wonderful question. And I guess I'll start with the end or the end part of your question, which is differences in different part of the country. Like one of the things that we've learned since launching our organization and replicating chapters in different parts of the country is how different agriculture is in different geographies, different competencies and products and seasonality, challenges with weather, distance from place to place where the agricultural production is and where the schools are. But universally, I think getting food and in particular local and fresh food into rural schools is a universal challenge that we face across this country. And rural schools being often in the places that are in the center of agricultural production, yet struggle the most sometimes to get that local food into their buildings. And so I'll lift up another story from the Bridgeton School District because there I think has been so much rich development there in our partnership through the years. This was a school that was doing almost no local procurement. And actually was a little bit skeptical about the potential of buying from local farms and didn't see the benefits of that initially. But mind you, this is a school in a very rural place in South Jersey, surrounded by farmland. Many of the kids that go there are the children of farm workers. It's a majority minority community, so mostly Latino and African American, and relatively low income. So some of the most challenging school food conditions that you could imagine. Um, and the school food service director, though, was intrigued by the potential of buying food from local farms and local processors. And he was frustrated by the fact that even though they were right there, when he went to his broadline distributor, the broadliner was not able to commit to being able to source anything from the farms in the community. One of the things that was unique to this community in particular is that there's a relatively, well, I won't say large, but a mid-scale IQF frozen processor that's there. So individually quick frozen, not to drop acronyms, right? And so it is, I think the highest quality frozen product that you can find, and it preserves a lot of the nutrients, a lot of the quality, and food comes to you visually appealing as well when frozen that way. Um, the food service wanted to find a way to get the product in because they knew that that IQF processor was also sourcing from local farms in the region, again, where the children's families were working. And yet again, the broadliner was not able to commit to providing food from this plant. So here comes Common Market. We worked very closely with the IQF processor. They had all of the practices in place that allowed them to maintain full supply chain transparency and allow us to quite literally identify specifically which farm the green beans or the corn or the peas were coming from. And so we worked with them to do that and develop a local line of IQF frozen produce. And the beautiful thing is that one, it's a product that many schools actually know how to work with, right? We're not introducing the need for chopping and processing. This is a minimally processed product that many schools already use and is an easy substitute. Again, produced right in the adjacent township from the school district and with farms right around the region. And so the exciting thing for us was we were able to work with this school to bring this IQ or several IQF frozen vegetables onto the line. And at the end of the day, we were able to do it at a cost basis lower than what they were getting from their broadline distributors. So here was this win where we were able to lift up the identity of the farmers. Many of the kids walked through and said, hey, my parents work there or my uncle works there. Lift up the brand of the processing partner. Many of their families work there as well. And the kids were excited to try this food that they knew was produced in their community by their family members and overcome what had been perception of impossibility at making these local connections. So that's my story.
That was great. I mean, what Common Market does is amazing to me. It really fulfills this niche need within the system of farm to institution, farm to school, that is so needed in order to make this whole thing work. Thank you for that story. I really appreciate it highly. All right, next we are going to go to Kathleen. I've been dying to ask you this question, Kathleen. So you have been involved in food policy really at the highest levels, including the USDA. What policy changes, whether federal, state, or local, would have the most immediate impact on schools' ability to procure sustainable, high-quality food? And what can districts do right now within the current policy landscape?
So I do think that having state law helps. I'm from Massachusetts originally, and Massachusetts has a law that has been on the books for a very long time that state institutions are to buy locally grown if it's not more than 10% more expensive. That's been on the books probably 20, 25 years. And, UMass as a university has done outstanding work in procuring local food in a state where the seasons of production and when school's in session don't match up really well. So I think that kind of law helps. And the most recent one that I'm aware of has been passed in Hawaii. I guess I'm going to have to go there and check it out. But I think those sort of mandates help give those who are championing local food um, more room for success. And I think the other thing too is in trying to get those policy changes, I think all of us need to arm ourselves with economic data. What is it going to mean for the rural community? What is it going to mean for the congressional district? What is it going to mean to the governor for his or her state if we invest locally? I mean, you got to go with the times. And right now, the times are dollars talk. And so we need to, find ourselves comfortable in that kind of analysis and language, because that will be what moves the decision makers.
I love that. And I feel like I was just talking yesterday on a North Dakota Farm to School webinar, and um, I was reading a stat about for every dollar that is invested into farm to school, there's between 60 cents and $2.61 in economic return. And I think you're right, Kathleen, that right now the economy is really speaking, and a lot of our farmers are challenged right now. Thank you. Okay, next we have Vanessa. So, Vanessa, you work with school food programs across the country through the Chef Ann Foundation. What's the difference between districts that successfully incorporate better ingredients and those that struggle? Is it a budget thing, a training thing, leadership, or something else entirely?
Yeah, really good question. Well, I think many of us know here on the webinar today, every school food authority faces many barriers to shifting towards values-aligned scratch cooking. There's tight budgets, you got inadequate kitchens, you have workforce shortages, and the regulatory complexity. It can all just kind of be very overwhelming for school districts. But even in the face of these challenges, there are districts that we work with that make real progress. And what we see in these more successful programs is not that they have fewer hurdles, but that they start small and invest in building a strong operational foundation. And they do that by doing three things I've noticed over the years. They define the department's values when it comes to food and ingredients. And that means explicitly naming what matters most, such as prioritizing certified organic foods, sourcing products from mid-sized family farms, or foods grown using regenerative practices. The second thing that they do is they set very clear values-aligned procurement goals, and they share them openly with their staff and the wider community. So, for example, they'll state that they want to onboard 5 new local farmers this school year or increase their food spend on values-aligned foods by 5% that year. Finally, they designate a staff member or a group of staff to own procurement responsibilities and keep that work moving forward. It's these fundamentals that give the team direction, accountability, and really something to rally around. They're the building blocks for a long-lived values-aligned meal program that can grow from year to year.
That's great. Thanks, Vanessa. Okay, we are going to move on to Suzy. Suzy, World Wildlife has an ambitious goal for agriculture to be net zero by 2040. What should school food teams be asking their suppliers or including in their RFPs to support regenerative agriculture and grassland conservation?
Such an important question. And I think one thing that is so important is for school food teams to really feel empowered to ask their suppliers questions and include criteria in their RFPs to advance their values and goals around sustainability and climate and regenerative agriculture. It's such a critical and fundamental step to supporting sustainable outcomes for their students and for the food system. But here are some more specific things to support climate outcomes, regenerative agriculture, and grassland conservation that I think would be important to include. One, really encouraging and asking suppliers, are they tracking and investing in regenerative agriculture across their sourcing footprint? Are they setting goals? Are they tracking progress against those goals? Are they investing in programs to help farmers and ranchers in their sourcing regions to deliver on those goals? A really key part to delivering on climate and resilience goals is making sure that those suppliers are committing to deforestation and conversion-free supply chains. So ensuring that their suppliers are not buying from production areas or producers that are contributing to deforestation or grassland conversion. And there's such a need to just raise these questions and demand answers, and suppliers really need to know where they're sourcing from and are those areas that are high risk of conversion. Here in the US, there's not a lot of deforestation, but there is a lot of grassland conversion. And so protecting grasslands and really asking questions about conversion is really important. This is something that is really high priority for WWF, and we track this with our Plowprint report and track it every year. And there are still really high rates of conversion for grasslands. In fact, 1.2 million acres of grasslands lost in 2022, the majority of it due to row crop agriculture expansion. So really asking questions about this and looking at it in supply chains is really important, and continuing to support policy that will support this. Then looking beyond that, also really asking suppliers if they're investing in programs that will support farmers in their supply chains to adopt practices that support regenerative agriculture. So cover crops, no-till, conservation crop rotations, these things that will make their producers more resilient in the face of more extreme weather, yields more resilient, more sustainable in the long term. And then, of course, really supporting more local and regional sourcing is really, really key.
Ooh, every time I could listen to you for hours. And I think I wanted to say one of the things that excites me so much. So we have a ton of school food operators on this webinar. I can see them in the chat. I saw them listed and registered beforehand. One of the coolest things is when I go out and meet with these school food directors and school food operators across the country and talk to them, they're all really excited to understand this information and understand how to dig into the vendors that they have and work with their RFPs on this. And it's a lot. I don't understand a lot of it. So it's exciting to me, the knowledge that our school food professionals really want to have to improve what they're doing in schools. Okay, we are going to continue on. Our next question is for you, Kathleen. So, Kathleen, your research center looks at food systems holistically. How do you measure success when it comes to sustainable school food programs beyond just the food itself? What outcomes should districts be tracking to demonstrate value to their communities?
Well, I think they need to track the economics, to repeat myself. That's going to help in the advocacy. One of the things I know for my own work at the Swette Center, it's hard to attribute specific numbers or whatever to actions, because in the world that I work in, I have 1,000 partners all the time. We're all trying to move in the same direction to achieve similar or the same goals. And how do you say what Chef Ann did versus what Sweetie did versus what Alice Waters did, or what, you know what I mean? So there's that difficulty, and I want to acknowledge that. But I also think we have to think about creative measures. When I served on the board for 6 years at Food Corps, we kept trying to say, what's the impact of Food Corps? It's very noisy, hard to measure, in terms of those interventions, the variety of interventions that Food Corps members, service members perform. And I kept saying, what about the Food Corps members themselves? In this process, these young people are being reoriented around food, and they're being trained to do all kinds of wonderful things. How are their careers going to progress? And should we track that and consider that part of Food Corps' mission and accomplishments? And I will tell you now, about half of my students, my grad students, come from Food Corps, because I want to invest in those people, to continue their journey. So I implore everybody to think beyond just the number of carrots that have been purchased locally, and come up with creative measures that suit your needs.
I love that. And I actually forgot that you were on the food court board. And it's so true. We hire a lot of people from as food course service members too. And it's great. And I also see that your exact same example in school food professionals. With our apprenticeship program, I see that, the amount of knowledge and desire for knowledge. That's kind of what I was saying before after Suzy, the amount of desire for knowledge to bring that to their job and do their job differently or think about their job differently. It's like it is an intangible almost stat, but it is so important. Okay, well, moving into our next question, which I'm excited for, Vanessa. So you have started working on a values aligned procurement initiative at the Chef Ann Foundation. Can you tell us about that and how you think this could impact sustainable procurement?
Yeah, be my pleasure. It's a significant project, so this will be quite a lengthy explanation, but hopefully I'll bring you along with me. Um, in California, we've had the pleasure of partnering with 6 different groups of school food authorities spread across the state. So there's far north is the California-Oregon border. They go down to the Central Coast, Inland Empire, and all the way down to San Diego County. So altogether, those groups represent about 57 unique school districts. And we're collaborating both with existing groups that have procured together to strengthen their current systems and capacity for collective values aligned purchasing. And we're collaborating with entirely new groups that are working together for the first time to build out their collective procurements focused entirely on sourcing values aligned foods. The core idea is a lot of what we've been talking about today, shifting for procurement driven by lowest cost to bids and procurements that balance costs with positive social, environmental, and economic impacts. What we've learned since working with these groups is these groups do issue solicitations together, but the actual purchasing remains fragmented. Each district ultimately forms its own contract with the awarded vendor. They buy whatever they want from that vendor in whatever volumes they want. And there's no real coordinated management or oversight of these contracts after they've been issued and the procurements that kind of happen afterwards. So we believe that we're not fully capturing the collective influence these schools could have in the marketplace because of that. And so we're digging into that with them. We're really looking at the mechanics of how food is procured within these groups. What are the legal structures? What do their contracts look like? What are their relationships with vendors? And we're going to explore how we can evolve those systems to more truly wield aggregated purchasing power. So kind of move from parallel purchasing to more coordinated purchasing where we act as a single strategic buyer. And hopefully we can make stronger commitments to more values aligned vendors and farmers. We think when we do all of this, we will come out with some better pricing, ensuring more values aligned foods gets into schools and then opens the door for mission driven suppliers. But ultimately, if successful, we'd like to weave together these 6 groups into a network of buyers that take that purchasing power to the next level in phase 2 of the project. So we're sort of just getting started with the group. And right now in a really exciting phase where we're working with them to identify what those specific products are that they want to start purchasing come January 2026.
Thanks, Vanessa. I love, I've been doing this work now 13-ish years. A lot of people have been doing it longer than me on this call, but I love that we are progressing to systems-based solutions that are unique. Small and mid-sized districts really do have a hard time kind of, with kind of bringing together their procurement efforts to do this kind of procurement. I'm excited to see how this turns out. More to come on that. Our next question is for Suzy. Suzy, when schools commit to sourcing from regenerative or sustainable producers, how does that actually impact farmers and ranchers' ability to stay in business and maintain their land? Can you help us understand the real world connection between a school's lunch tray and a producer's bottom line?
I think that the impact is so underappreciated, and it's just such an exciting opportunity because schools have really immense buying power. They are so big, and there are across schools, they are really such an enormous source of demand. So if you look at that in terms of the opportunity for sourcing and demand for regenerative and sustainable production, and then that benefit to healthy, sustainable food for kids, the double benefit there is just enormous. And I dug into just some of the data here, and I was just like, okay, wow. So there are 7 times more school cafeterias in the US than there are McDonald's. And last year, the National School Lunch Program, which helps subsidize school meals in the US, provided 4.6 billion lunches. And that's just enormous. And there are 67,000 schools in all 50 US states that practice farm to school programs. So these numbers just add up and start getting really big really fast. And there are a number of programs that can really support all of this. And there's the Good Food School Purchasing Program, which helps focus food procurement on local economies, health, and valued workforce, animal welfare and environmental sustainability. There are a number of programs like the Native Farm to School program that the Native First Nations Development Institute helps connect in indigenous communities on connecting a local and indigenous production into tribal schools. There's the Patrick Leahy Farm to School grant program by USDA that can provides funding dedicated to school supported agriculture. It's doing just amazing work, providing really significant funding. So across all of these, the number of schools and these different programs, the schools are a really serious market and really important opportunity for local and regional and sustainable production, and just really important source of demand. And so really being able to robustly connect local and regional and sustainable production and schools as a really coordinated source of demand, just enormous benefit between the two, and just a really exciting opportunity. But really being able to have the two connected in a viable way and see each other as a market and a demand in a viable way is really, really important.
Thank you, Suzy. That was great. All right, next we're going to move on to Haile. So Haile, the common market bridges the gap between regional farmers, institutional buyers like schools. When you're working with a farmer who wants to sell to schools and a school that wants to buy local, what's the biggest mismatch that you typically see between what each side expects or needs, and how do you solve for that?
Yeah, I think this question definitely relates to the last question you posed to Suzy, and kind of the potential of school markets for local, sustainable, regional family farms. But I think while the potential is there, the opportunity and the barriers to achieving that and realizing that potential are fairly immense. The supply chains for school food sometimes defy logic, and it's not like that kind of linear relationship or what we can relate to going to a market or even a small store buying directly from a family farm in their community. The demand within these schools is so profound. Very rarely can a single farmer provide that need for any item. And also very rarely is the demand within schools for any particular product so consistent that it actually creates a meaningful ongoing opportunity for a small farm. And so I think when trying to create these connections and match the interest between schools that want to do better by their community and farmers that want to try to access this market, we have to always begin with a fair degree of level setting so that people understand actually what it means to sell to large institutions. Common Market, we serve hundreds of institutions, thousands of customers across the country. up and down every customer vertical you can think of. School food is by far the hardest space to operate in. We'll begin with payments, right? And just the need to do things differently within school food to actually make opportunities equitable for family farms is fairly profound. Again, back to payments. We as an intermediary representing farmers sometimes can wait months, not 30, 60, not 90 days, sometimes over 120 days to be paid by school districts for food that we sell to them that they've already cooked, consumed, and sold. Now imagine if the farmer was selling directly to that institution and having to wait that long to be compensated for all their hard work. It's the kind of opportunity that could be so amazing that it puts you out of business. So finding the ways to balance that, to balance risk for family farms, to normalize demand within schools across menus, across volume, making that market truly accessible and consistent for the farmer, are among the things that we do to try to actually realize all of the potential for local procurement. Because otherwise it becomes nearly impossible for small family farms to participate, and certainly not on an ongoing basis.
Wow. Okay. Well, I think at 11:47 Mountain Time, I think we have a ton of audience questions, and we're going to start getting to some of those audience questions now. Thank you guys for asking so many questions. So the first audience question we have is for Suzy. Suzy, are there opportunities to support carbon drawdown through regenerative grazing and local meat procurement? And how can we make this type of procurement more accessible for schools?
Definitely are. There are a number of programs through USDA that support regenerative grazing and grassland conservation. They definitely need more investment. There are a number of programs through state agencies and through USDA, and there are important opportunities for public-private partnerships for supply chain companies to partner with these programs and help grow them and make them larger. So some of these programs include the Conservation Reserve Program, the Grassland Conservation Reserve Program, Regional Conservation Partnership Program, and the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program. And companies can partner with these and help develop programs and help engage their producers in these programs to keep grasslands intact, support rotational grazing, managed grazing, support their producers in driving climate and nature outcomes. They're also really important programs to slow the rate of conversion, particularly programs like Sod Saver, which there's a little bit complex, getting a little bit into the weeds, so to speak, but the government supports crop insurance for farmers, which is an important provision. Agriculture is a risky business, but in subsidizing crop insurance, it also encourages farmers to plow up lands to bring into agriculture that are highly marginal. Sod Saver reduces the crop insurance subsidy, but not enough to reduce that incentive to cultivate marginal lands as much as is needed. So we actually need Sod Saver to be bigger and stronger, apply in more states and reduce that subsidy even further. So there are also opportunities to help advocate for policies that would further protect grasslands.
Oh, thanks, Suzy. That was great. Okay, this one is open, although I have a feeling either Vanessa or actually a number of you could answer this. So here's the question. For RFPs, I've read that regenerative often uses a lot of pesticides, which are petroleum-based. How are busy food service directors able to verify what practices farmers are using? Isn't certified organic the only independently verified way to know what you're getting versus regenerative, which doesn't have any clear definition and can be used by farmers to greenwash?
Well, I wanted to answer that, but also the lights in my office, I hadn't moved. They just went off. So that's why I'm waving my hand. Okay, let me take a stab in that and
Great.
others can try. this is hard work, right? Because a lot of people producing under the term regenerative are using the same battery of synthetic chemicals and fertilizers. So it does require homework. And the problem is, small doesn't necessarily mean good in terms of scale. Big doesn't necessarily mean bad. Then there's the quandary between choosing between local and organic. How do you do this on top of your day job? Here's my suggestion. The great chef Jose Andres and I used to teach together, and our dream, still unrealized, is that the lunchroom would also be part of the classroom. And I'm wondering if you can seek out teachers and classes in your schools who might want to take on the research and figure out what's going on some of these farms. It might be, especially if you're in a school system that has the higher grades, it might be a perfect uh, class. It could be biology, it could be history, it could be all different kinds of subject matters that students already have to study, and it could fit in. And then you'd also build a partner in a teacher in your school, or partners. So that's my thought on that question. Thanks.
I love that. And lunchroom as classroom, that's getting some good thumbs up in the chat. And also, I know as part of some of the policy roadmap work we're doing at the Chef Ann Foundation, we are trying to explore the opportunity to actually get lunchtime credited as curriculum time. Obviously a heavy lift, but it would do a lot to kind of change that time and increase the opportunity there. Anyone else have anything about that RFP question?
I mean, not to put you on the spot, Hailey, but I'd love to hear from you on that as somebody who has to respond to, say, me providing advice to a school district to say, put this requirement in your RFP. When you see something like that, how do you respond to it? And are you capable of even drilling down to the farm level to get
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. And I'd come off of mute also because I was excited about the question. So, certified organic it's a third party certification, and there are many different third party certification programs. Regenerative currently, outside of regenerative organic, which is still relatively small, there aren't many regenerative certifications. But I think what you want to see in local and regional procurement are real relationships, right? You want if you're too busy, and I get that a lot of folks are, to directly build a relationship with the farmers yourselves, you want to be working with vendors and intermediaries that do have the time to build those relationships deeply and do have the ability to verify production practices. And so for us, we do a lot of second party verification. We don't call it auditing, but we work very closely with our farmers to understand how they're growing their food, what their inputs are, what their labor practices are, what their water practices are, that they're generally good stewards of the land, and representing that the values that the institution wants to invest in. And if your prime vendor cannot communicate those same values to you, they are failing your community. And yes, that should show up in your RFP language as well.
I'm going to add on because we have another question for you, which I think you're kind of on the precipice of. So this question was for Hailey. So thinking about food safety, how do you work with small farms for whom GAP certification is financially out of reach?
Yeah. So one, I will make the argument that if you're large enough to be a wholesale producer and meet the needs of school districts, you're also large enough to afford GAP certification. I think that people perceive that GAP is a requirement that is too arduous to overcome, but I would challenge you to dig in. It's actually very achievable. And farmers that we work with, dozens of them, hundreds of them, all across the country have achieved GAP certification. We work with them to get there, right? It's not something that it's not a light switch that you can just flip on. It takes capacity building, record keeping, and other practices that you may not have. But there are plans to get there, roadmaps, very achievable, and I encourage everyone to do it.
Yeah, thank you. That was great. All right, we have this one's for anyone. It's a good one for right now. So the question is, this is all very exciting to hear. Do we see any political support from the federal and state government catching up with these demands? What can be done so that the burden does not rest on the school districts to jump through all the hoops?
Again, I think you need to make the economic case. Everyone is thinking about the cost of food, they're thinking about the economy, they're thinking about farmers um, selling the land, going bankrupt. Making the economic case sells right now. I don't care what politician we're talking about, what political party, what state. That is the argument of the moment.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to ask this one last question. It's not in the chat, but I had it, and it's to anyone who wants to answer. So, this is to any of our speakers. When you look ahead 5 years, what's one change you hope to see in school food procurement that feels just barely out of reach today, but could become a standard practice?
I can go. From an ops perspective, would love to see that every district had a dedicated procurement staff who could focus on sourcing, contract management, and building relationships with vendors. We advocate here at CAF for kitchen staff educated in the culinary arts, and I think we should also be talking about the need for folks in school districts to be dedicated to procurement. So that's
Love that.
The Trump administration suggests they may be doing away with the Department of Education, more aggressive approach coming up here in the near future. They have really dismantled a lot of USDA. I'm not of the company of Build Back Better. I like Build Back Different, or not even Build Back. That sounds like going backwards. I want to go forward with new visions. And so when we think about the school day and giving students 20 minutes to consume a healthy lunch and socialize, get on the playground. It's insane. So unless we get the education leaders and the food leaders together, this thing is never going to be where it needs to go. And so this dismantling of the education department, I don't know, when people come in to rethink, I would put that front and center.
I love that. Okay, well, we are at time. I will add, I love doing it differently. The one thing I would like to go back to is the 660 million that was cut from the federal government this past year for local food funding for schools. So, with the exception of that, I would agree with you. So you guys, thank you. This huge thank you for your time, to our guests for sharing their expertise, to the community that is in this chat on this line. I think we are all in going through things right now in this world. There's a lot going on. And when I see what's going on in this chat, I am so uplifted by how much people want to jump in and support change. This is a community endeavor. It takes a village. There are so many nonprofits across the country working on this, and together, I just feel like we're gonna get there. We're creating change together. So you all will receive a follow-up note with the recording of today's conversation, along with any of the relevant materials from the discussion today, especially some of these links in the chat that people are putting in there. If there was any unanswered questions, we're going to try and answer them in the document we send out. And we plan to do the series again in 2026. So if anyone has thoughts about what topics we should cover, please reach out, let us know. We have a running list now. And again, thank you. Thank you so much to our panelists, and thank you so much to the Chef Ann Foundation team. There's a ton of folks behind the scenes that have made this possible, and it's a stellar team that does a great job. So thank you all.